So, first off, tonight, Fallout Equestria, 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come on in. See how the characters spend their time recovering and figuring out how to deal with their new enemies. And tomorrow, MechWarrior Online, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come on. Come watch some live streams. That's how we pay for the shenaniganry. On to the video! Or is it? I hope so. You all think I'm nuts, right? It's okay though, right? Anyway, links for stuff in the description. Now review. Battlefleet Gothic Armada II has had major improvements since its beta. The two betas required a whole lot of rebalance and rework, and the devs managed to get a lot of it done. Fleets feel like they're more balanced, though the Tyranids and the Orcs being slightly overpowered still, but the developer continued to patch Battlefleet Gothic Armada 1 until 2 weeks before the announcement of the second game. I feel that as they get more data from us playing, they will continue to patch this while their game runs in the wild. And by doing this, they can find out exactly how to kind of rebalance the factions so that the Tyranids and Orcs aren't super powerful. The campaigns are nice to see, more than just the Imperium of Man. However, being made to at least try them in order, and the ending of all three campaigns just wrapped up at the end is a bit lazy writing and also not the best game design. I feel like these should have been separate campaigns with separate endings that were more tightly built like the first Battlefleet Gothic. The first Battlefleet Gothic reminded me more of Command and Conquer, where you played a faction and that you stuck with that faction through the entire campaign, and all of that faction's missions were different from the other faction's missions. Now they're not. It feels more like I'm playing Civilization, which is an entirely different game and a lot more freeform, but also not exactly the tight 40k experience we were seeking. And spoiler alert, they all conclude with the Tyranid fleet devouring the sector, and all of your efforts for the first two campaigns don't matter. The beloved characters we all had before will be gone at the end of the game. This has really written themselves into a corner here, because they're going to have to write all new characters and all new stuff if they want to ever make another game. I'm also disappointed with the betrayal of the Tyranids. Unlike, say, Dawn of War 2's final expansion, there is no notable interaction, statement of purpose, or even an alien mind to try to wrap your head around. Their entire story is told for them through the Eldar, Orcs, Chaos, and Imperium interactions. Conversations about the Tyranid is how their story is told. I get they are supposedly mindless swarming assault of death and devouring everything, but the depictions of the Great Ancient One and the Swarm Lord having some intelligence behind those eyes and some more capability beyond just mindless devouring could have given better ideas for notable characters, and they simply aren't present. I was expecting to actually get into the mind of the Swarm and understand why the Tyranid does what it does. Instead, we're just left to believe they're mindlessly devouring for no other reason than eternal hunger. It really does feel unfleshed out, or just, well, one-dimensional. You don't really need them to be more than one-dimensional, but if you're going to play as them, I would like a reason for why they do what they do. The other issues I have with the campaign is the passivity of the AI, which fights among itself more than it fights you. This is made worse by the developer way of playing is with a timer on your campaign that basically indicates that if the time bar fills up, you lose! Hope you saved recently! Because if you didn't, the autosave saves every turn and overwrites the previous turn. I find this to be a cheap cop-out for your strategies and for your engagement with the AI. This is further made relevant by the basic tactical AI. I've taken 500 points of Tyranid ships versus 1,500 Imperial invasion and won quite easily on the hardest difficulty. The game also only has 2 campaign modes, Cruiser Clash and Domination. All the others are reserved for story-based missions, which is a little disappointing. I miss the planetary bombardments. I miss the blockade running. I miss the actual escort missions. I miss the Admiral Fleet Hunt. Like, those missions were interesting. It made it where when you went into a campaign mission, you weren't quite sure what you were going to be facing until you saw the select ship screen. Now it's all cruiser clashes and all domination, or you can set it to be one or the other, and that be the entirety of your campaign is 300 or so little cruiser clashes with the AI. I remember the old campaign where it was better and each mission was actually handcrafted. You had lines of dialogue and everything that kind of made the missions fleshed out a bit more. Here it's simply adjust what ships you want to engage the race and go at it. This is just going to show you that the AI is pretty weak and provide a whole lot of it won't provide a whole lot of challenge to you at all. The timer on the campaigns is more challenging than the AI in the campaigns. And if you turn the timer off, it plays like a game of Civilization where you're just mindlessly going around, conquering sector after sector, just waiting for the opportunity to spring your next attack. And furthermore, the AI's weaknesses are really illustrated in the domination mode. You can manipulate the AI regardless of race into sitting there trying to claim the domination point, while you just shoot, ram, or destroy their ships. This actually makes me want to do domination against the Eldar a lot, because then they sit there and their hollow fields don't work. Their primary defense system is turned off because the AI wants to claim the point and doesn't understand it can circle the point inside the point to keep claiming it and still maintain movement. I desperately really want more story-driven handcrafted missions like the first game, or simply a better AI. One of these two things, or both of them, would have made a complete improvement from first game to second game. As it stands, the campaigns are not as good, and honestly, once you get through the story beats, that's all you're there for. The voice acting is superb and incredibly well done, and all of the story is delivered in a stellar and worthy 40K universe. The gameplay is solid against a human opponent, if somewhat unbalanced, as the Tyranids or Eldar still feel overpowered, and the Orcs sometimes just feel bizarrely strong. This has never become more evident than in multiplayer. The increasing difficulty skirmish mode is bizarrely just gone, as is Port Maul and individual ship upgrades. It's been replaced with admirals, and only flagships get abilities. In the campaign, their abilities are pre-selected for you. Otherwise, the only abilities you have are based on ship type and whether it has torpedoes or launch bays. This allows for easy change between vessels because you don't have Port Maul restricting you to where you have to pick a vessel, stay with it, and level up that vessel. But your normal ships of the line don't get any specials anymore. The expanded lists of vessels makes for returning fleets very, very easy to try all these different strategies, but the lack of depth with those strategies and the 2-ability admiral system makes admiral ships and their special capabilities matter less and less the bigger the battle scale is. When you turn the battle scale up to its maximum quantity, a stasis bomb feels pointless, because it's not inhibiting enough ships and you don't have more than one of them at a time. The combat has been slowed down significantly in terms of time to kill as well, and how durable the ships are. Gone are the devastating 200 to 300 torpedo volleys for something that's half as powerful. Rams still do a lot of damage if you do them properly, and are really satisfying. They deliver that both sound effect of boom, and you see the ships spin off course and get shoved around and just absolutely devastated by ramming attacks. But the most effective way to kill ships right now is actually either removing their morale and forcing them to flee the battlefield, or kill their crews. This is especially true of the larger vessels. This does help with the larger scale battles, where a small battle is now 1 cruiser, 2 light cruisers, and 6 escorts, where the large battles can involve multiple battleships, or battleships plus a dozen ships of the line and their escorts. You'll find the battles lasting longer and being more impactful on your time, And at a certain point, the battles get tedious. There's just so much of that one fight, and the ships run out of torpedoes and fighters and bombers and special abilities and all this stuff that makes the ships special and gives you something to do besides tell everyone to focus their fire and keep adjusting ships for ranges when you try to set up ramming attacks. Splitting the Tau into multiple fleets feels like a cheap cop-out to get multiple fleets. If you just left them together, it would have only made them have as many ships as the Tyranids. While splitting the Mechanicum feels natural because the Mechanicum ships actually function differently than regular Imperium ships, and putting them together would be confusing. Same thing with the Space Marines. Splitting the Tau fleets just feels awkward compared to the first game. I really would have appreciated if you just left those together and not split them into 3 fleets. 2. Either way, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes the game compelling to play multiplayer, though, when you just get to flip between different fleets and you get to try out all these different strategies and all these different factions. But this is a big, big but. And it's the part that's going to leave you all disappointed. The lack of individual ship upgrades, favors, individual crew upgrades, and other small changes you could make to your ship are all gone. This makes the game feel significantly lessened by their absence.
The enemy is close to victory by strategic points. The enemy has seized a strategic area.
And instead of feeling like you're building a fleet, sorry about that, microphone setting went a little bit wonky for a second. Instead of feeling like you're building a fleet, you're simply putting together units to play and then move on without any lasting impact or it mattering from battle to battle. I do like that they unlocked all the skills and specials for multiplayer. That's a change from the beta. You don't have to earn them now, so someone who's played 100 times doesn't have some innate advantage over someone who's just picked up the game. But I don't like that its depth is just gone and the personalization of fleets is destroyed. It's 2 different Tau fleets, excuse me. It's 2. It doesn't make me happy, and it doesn't make me want to come back and play this for lengths of time. The scope is bigger, but not better when it comes to this game. I'm not saying it's a bad game. This is a good game. It's just not as good as the first one. It's like going from a pool that has an 11-foot deep end to a 5-foot deep lake. Yes, there's a whole lot more lake to cover and play in, but the depth is gone, and it disappoints me as a player to lose all that. If you want another dose of Battlefleet Gothic, it's all still here. But you will find the campaign can occupy for hours, but it's no more deep than a campaign of Civilization. It becomes less about overall strategy and more about playing again with different tactics and different ships, and more like all of that is gone. Like playing through the campaign again, just using different ship tactics and different abilities, that's gone. Instead, it's how many ships do I need? Oh, look, it leveled up with a minor set of stat improvements. Oh, hey, a random invasion fleet for me to crush effortlessly. Meanwhile, unlocks of the campaign to get bigger ships or ship upgrades feel a lot less like upgrades and more like the restrictions are being taken off. When you finally get the max level renown and have all the upgrades with battleships, you just feel far too overpowered. Such a power trip doesn't feel like it belongs in Warhammer 40k, but then again we have Space Marine, and that's awesome, but Space Marine still had that sense of grim desperation, and the grim desperation that the story delivers in the background feels like it doesn't fit the tone of the battles you're playing. You hear something like, Captain, there are so many of them, come across as hollow when I have 400 points on the field above what the enemy has total, and 1,000 points of reinforcements ready to come charging in. It's like the game is tone deaf to what the player actually does versus the challenge presented at times. All this adds up to a Battlefleet Gothic 2, which doesn't feel bad. It actually is quite good. The systems are what you would expect. The battles are fairly tight. Controls are responsive. You feel like you're actually moving around gigantic ships of war that should remain unchallenged for decades. Excuse me, it's rather late. But at the same time, there's just something about it that here and there the spark of the first Battlefleet Gothic is gone. And I guess that's what disappoints me. It feels like there's been a lot of decisions for this game made to make it appeal to a larger audience at the cost of the depth that drew in the audience in the first place. It's a good game. It's just not as good as the first one. And the direction feels like a sidestep from the potential this series truly has. I hope they continue with the game, and I hope they do a third game that really does focus on adding back the depth of their first installment to make players really dive in. You have to remember that giving mass appeal isn't what we want here. This is a very niche community of Warhammer 40k. We want something with the depth of XCOM, and you delivered that with the first game. And then you took away that depth, and now I'm questioning how I feel about it. Is this worth $40 on Steam? If you like the first one and you just want more ships to play with and more combat, and you just want bigger battles and campaigns other than the Imperium to play through, by all means. But if you're expecting the depth of the first game, if you're expecting the in-depth analysis and every single decision feeling like it's life or death that you had when you played the first game, it's not there, and I'd wait for this to go on sale, or they do some more fixes to try to add that depth back to the game, or they do some real expansions with a much more story-driven campaign with better handcrafted missions than what's presented here. There's only a handful of missions in each campaign that are handcrafted. 1 per sector. 8 sectors per campaign. Total of 24 handcrafted missions. All the others are just randomly generated based on the AI's action, and it feels like the game was assembled more by procedural generation than by a game developer sitting here and crafting these missions to be true challenges every step of the way. So, good game, not as good as the first. That's where it stands. And I hope that's a satisfactory answer for you as to how I feel about Battlefleet Gothic 2.